have all followed the controversy about the poverty line. You also know that for a number of years our poverty line was pathetically very low, and it is still very low. 32 rupees and 26 rupees now, which is also being lowered to 28 rupees and 24 rupees is the poverty line. And earlier, of course, it was 19 rupees and 14 rupees. You know, it has always been like 17 rupees and 12 rupees. I'm talking of the urban and the rural areas. And it was always, you know, something that I would always question the wisdom of these planners as to how could they be trying to betray the country's interest by keeping such a stringent poverty line all these years. It's not one or two planning commission. It's subsequently so many people who have, you know, come out with the poverty line definition that I think all of them have to be held responsible for this betrayal, I would call it, to the nation. Why I feel it is, let me it with a simple example. You know, in the village, somebody fell in the well. Now, well, the people had collected. The people had collected there and they were trying to see, the well was about 200 feet deep. So they were trying to figure out, you know, how to pull him out of the well. The economist happened to pass by. Please don't mind if I step on the wrong toes. He happened to be passing by. And he said, hold on. I'll try to see what we can do to really pull out this man. So the planner, he was a planner also, so he went there and he made a quick calculation with his arithmetic and said, the well is 200 feet deep, but you need to bring me a rope of 100 feet. You know, economics, so 100 feet. Because he had done his arithmetic, he could see the kind of energy levels, you know, the kind of the money that would be involved in the rope and all those things. So he worked it out that for the 100 feet, the man can, with his own energy level, can walk up the well, and for the next 100, he could be pulled up by the well. And you would all agree that eventually the man was drowned. Now, this kind of economic thinking has prevailed in this country for last so many years. You know, if you have a poverty line which is not even half of what actually it should be, the poor are actually going to drown. Whatever effort you might make to pull them out, you know, nothing can work successfully. And we all know, you know, the efforts that we have made to cover up the poor in this country. You know, nobody wants to talk about poor and poverty. Now, having said that, I think it tells us as to where the planners have always faltered or looked at it with myopic intentions as to what the country needs to do. Let's now move on to the broader issue that we have to discuss today, agriculture and food security. The Prime Minister addressing the 66th UN General Assembly had made a point. And that time when he made the statement, I was really appalled. I said, how could, you know, for a change, the Prime Minister be so sensible in accepting? And that's what he said. He said, at the 66th General Assembly in New York, he said that at a time, sometimes back, we were told to appreciate privatization and globalization. And now, he said, we are being told to manage the negative impacts or try to see how we can address the negative impacts of globalization. I thought here was a very clear message, you know, and coming from Prime Minister, the message should have also percolated down to the Planning Commission and the planners and the Cabinet. That, you know, there's something going wrong with the process of globalization and privatization, which he himself accepted at the 66th General Assembly in New York. And very rightly said that the world is now telling us to cope up with the negative impacts. So the negative impacts were there for all to see. And I was very happy to realize that the Prime Minister had accepted that, you know, they were fault. But if you look at all his other utterings wherever he goes, and he being the chair of the Planning Commission, and if you have attended or listened to the time when he is addressing the full House or full Planning Commission meeting, look at his statements, it's just in contrast to what he has said at the UN. Probably, you know, we have a habit, Indians have a habit of saying something different outside the country and something different within the country. It's true with film stars who don't mind going and playing topless abroad, but have all the problems if they do it in India. Now, there is something happening in this country that I don't know what the reason is. But somehow when we come to the country, we try to justify our understanding of all these economic issues by saying we have no other alternative but to go in for globalization, economic liberalization, and for privatization. Ladies and gentlemen, I am not here to debate on this particular issue whether globalization is bad for the country or neoliberalism is bad or good for the country. But let's look at some of the issues that really should be setting up, setting up some food for thoughts in our minds. When Montesquieu Aluvalia suggests to Kerala not to produce paddy, and you can always depend upon paddy imports from outside the state, maybe from Bihar or other northeastern states. Actually, he's been very kind to be honest here when he comes to Kerala to say that you don't need to produce paddy. To the rest of the country, he doesn't say that bluntly, but he does say very clearly and loudly that we don't need to produce food, we don't need farmers, and it is the farmers who are actually eating more, and that is why the prices are going up. So all these things we have seen. But if you try to go a little beyond that, you realize that the issue that you mentioned in Kerala is something that also at the national level, let's see how it has figured out or how it is being developed. A few months back, he happened to travel to Oman. In Oman, he made a statement that India does not allow foreign companies to come and buy land within the country. Our law doesn't allow that. But you can do one thing. At a time when there is as you know, a scramble globally to buy land, to take out land on lease and grow crops, or do agriculture and then ship that back to their own countries. His suggestion was to many investors there that you don't have to come and buy land in India since we don't allow that. We have to wait till the political decision is taken. But till then, you can come do contract farming in India, and whatever you produce, you can take it back to you. Now, I thought for a country which has emerged out of the hunger trap only a few years back, quote unquote hunger trap, should have known what is the meaning of food security or food insecurity at the same time in a country like India, with a population of 1.2 billion. Let me take you back to what it means to have a food security dependent upon production within the country, how relevant it is or how important it is for a country like India, and how foolish it will be if we try to deviate from that, if we try to abandon that approach and move on to the neoliberal approach which says you need to be competitive, buy from where it is cheaply available. Let's look at that. And I think we'd have to go back a little time in history. In 1943, when India was faced with Bengal famine, we know millions of people died in Bengal, and it was in the backdrop of the Bengal famine that India got its independence in 1947. And of course, you all know that we were a full imported country at that time. Now, it was not that Jawaharlal Nehru didn't try his best to, improve the food production capacity of this country. He tried his best, and in fact, in 1955, he spoke from the ramparts of the Red Fort on 15th August 1955. He said that it is very humiliating for any country to import food. So everything else can wait, but not agriculture. Today, Mr. Chidambaram quotes half the statement. It is often quoted by even the Prime Minister. The statement they quote is, the statement they quote is, everything else can wait, but not agriculture. But I think if you look at the full statement, then you realize how concerned Jawaharlal Nehru was at the kind of food imports and the arm twisting that was coming along with it, that he wanted the country to become food secure. Then, of course, we went on importing food and food. In 1965, when India was faced with a terrible drought, which happened to be the year when India and Pakistan had the war, Lal Bahadur Shastri was the Prime Minister, and that particular year, we imported 10 million tons of food grains. The next year, Mrs. Gandhi came into power, and that again was a drought year, and we imported 11 million tons of food grains in 1966. So that was the biggest food import at that time in history, and that was also the time, if you have, know a little bit about Indian food insecurity prevailing at that time, that the US was very upset with India, and they were upset because in an interview, Lal Bahadur Shastri to an American newspaper, the question asked to him was, what do you think about the war in Vietnam? Lal Bahadur Shastri had replied, and I quote, he said, it is an act of aggression. Now that small sentence, it is an act of aggression, had annoyed the then American President Lyndon Johnson. So he said, let's teach India a lesson. How dare a hungry nation call America an aggressor? So it's very easy to teach a hungry nation a lesson, and that's to any hungry nation, the best way to teach a lesson is to go in for or stop food exports, and that's what the US did. I remember once talking to Mr. C. Subramaniam, the late C. Subramaniam, when he was then the food minister, and I asked him, I said, how did you cope up with that crisis when there was no food left in India? He said, yes, he recalled that there was a time when there was food in the country only for 7 days. So he said he called a meeting of all his experts, and they sat down, and he said, gave a task to them to identify the ship that is carrying food and sailing closest to India. That ship was identified, and then an SOS was sent to American president to divert that food to India, otherwise millions of people would die of hunger. So that was the kind of a situation that India was living in. Perhaps we have forgotten. We are a country which seems to forget everything so soon, and more so with the planners. And that was the time when we knew what the importance of food imports was. Subsequently, when Mrs. Gandhi came over and took over, and the seeds of Green Revolution were sown, I once asked Dr. M.S. Swaminathan, the architect of India's Green Revolution. Of course, we can go on talking about how significant the entire thing was and so on. But of course, such a massive program cannot happen without a political will. So my question to him was that what was the political will which necessitated bringing in Green Revolution into India? And he told me a story which I think I need to share with you. He said actually the history was written in a small car journey. He was bringing Mrs. Gandhi to inaugurate something in the Indian Agricultural Research Institute in Pusa. And in the car, Mrs. Gandhi asked him, and that was also a time when Norman Borlaug was trying to push the dwarf policy into India. There was a controversy at that particular time in India. And Mrs. Gandhi asked him, that Swami, I would go by what you are saying, but I need a commitment from you. So I'm sure you will agree, the person sitting next to the Prime Minister, what would he be answering? And he said, I'll buy what you are trying to tell me about the dwarf seeds that we need to bring into India, but can you give me a commitment that you will give me a surplus of about 10 million tons in a couple of years from now? Now, the second part of the sentence is very important. She said, because I want the bloody Americans off my back. So you can very well see how humiliated or how tough the arm twisting must be that she must be faced with, that she actually wanted to come out of that entire situation. So we were a country which were living in literally ship-to-mouth existence at that time, and I think Mrs. Gandhi's initiative to pull India out of the poverty trap or hunger trap was really remarkable. The good or bad things, let's discuss that later or sometimes later, whether Green Revolution was good or bad for the country. But at that particular time, we went into Green Revolution, which was subsequently called Green Revolution, because the idea was that we should start producing within the country and get away from this, the complete dominance, because we were not producing enough for the country. So the rest, of course, is history. Now, 44 years later, we are now trying to dismantle all that we were actually doing to create that Green Revolution, to create that food security, or to create that self-sufficiency in agriculture. I have never seen a country which has been so short-sighted or so short in memory that you are trying to dismantle everything that actually pulled you out of the hunger trap. The policies that the government of India today has in that, the policy that the Planning Commission